All right, hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. I am Tom. George is going to be here in a few minutes, I think 5 minutes or less, but we will see what happens. Hello, everybody. Hello to a bunch of members that I see in the chat. Hello, Pogo, Sourmelon Gaming, Minor Deegan, and anybody else that I have missed. Welcome to a good week in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. This is the week we've been waiting for, and I'm interested to see if a lot of you are still feeling the pain and feel like this was not enough, or if this is a good beginning. Have we turned the corner? I will tell you, we have been talking about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners bottoming out for the last month, and this is just the time frame we've been talking about. I did go on the members only stream on Tuesday and say that I definitely feel like the bottom is behind us. I think we may have even talked about that last Friday. And when you see some of the charts, especially the 1 day chart, I just think it's clear that the bottom, that was the bottom, that was the max fear, max panic. And I'm going to show a bunch of doom and gloom articles that came out around that time. And that came out on Tuesday, where I think you could almost have called it on Tuesday just watching the narrative go on. And basically, since those articles came out, every single day has been green in the market. Every single day has been green for the Bitcoin miners. This was the best week we've had in Bitcoin miners in many, many months. So I'm enjoying the good week. Don't know if it's going to last. We'll talk about it. We'll see what you guys think. But I'm taking what we can get for now. This was an excellent week. So I'm just going to start out by asking if anybody could please hit the like button. We are at 15 likes. We're going for 100 likes. The last 2 weeks in a row, we got there under the wire within 2 minutes of the end of the stream. So help us out. It helps the stream out in real time. Let's get people out there interested in the Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin. And I'm going to show you the retail investors have gone away, and I have an article that talks about it. So people need to pay attention and listen because they're already missing a part of the run. I believe it's not, nowhere near too late, but you're going to see some I think people are going to be surprised how much the Bitcoin miners are up. And I know it's the tip of the iceberg, and I'm going to show you the charts. They're still way down off of their 12-month highs. So there's a long way to go, but I do believe it has begun. So we're at over 95,000 right now for Bitcoin. We came into, or I should say, we exited last week at, let's just scroll down. See, this is how far I gotta scroll down to get to this dotted line here is last week. So the U.S. and Canadian equity markets were closed on Friday of last week. So this was Bitcoin close at the close of the equity markets on Thursday. Just under 85,000, 84,860. So we went from 84,860 to over 95,000. So over a $10,000 increase in the price of Bitcoin over the course of essentially the last week. And I think that there was a clear breakout. We're going to look at that, and I think we're playing that out, and I think I think there's much more to go, but time will tell. So let's see what you guys think. Let's get a poll up. Just going to type for a second, so all right, I'm going to make this one super simple. What do you think about the current Bitcoin price action? So number one, this is a temporary bounce and we're going to retest our lows, or two, the bull runs on and we're headed back towards a new all-time high. And that doesn't mean that we're headed back there tomorrow. That just means up from here? Are we going up from here, or are we going back down from here? Do we need to retest 74 or 75,000 again, or are those days over? And remember, people were talking about much lower numbers. I'm going to show you some people that were talking about 65,000, 50,000, and I never thought that was in the cards, and I still don't think that that is in the cards. I think that is long gone. So I did make one move this week, so I'll tell you guys about that later. I did sell something and with the proceeds buy a couple of other things. So all still within the Bitcoin mining universe. So I'm still holding or adding, essentially. All right, welcome to Talkin Investing. Sour Melon Gaming member for 26 months. Thank you very much, Sour Melon Gaming. Tom, I appreciate your consistency with weekly streams. Thanks for all the work you put in. I know many others here would agree. Happy 26 months. Thank you very much, Sour Melon Gaming. I know it's been sometimes an exciting and a lot of times a frustrating journey, but I do know you've shared with the group some trades that you did very well on. Having said that, you know, there's been a lot of frustration for everybody, and I know you're feeling it too, but thanks for being with us the whole time. Thanks for being a member, and that goes for everybody else who's here, who's a member or who's been a regular visitor to our Friday live streams. It's appreciated, and we like to get the opportunity. And again, George isn't here yet, but I am expecting him here in a few minutes. He got held up and said he was going to be a little bit late, so I don't know what a little bit means, but we're going to find out. We'll see when he gets in. Sour Melon Gaming also said not enough. That this week was not enough, and I you know, it wasn't enough. We're not done. I mean, if that's it, then it's not enough. But I think it's an awfully good start, and I think we're going to trend in this direction. Now, every week isn't going to look exactly like this week. I'm going to take a sneak peek and just show you what this week looked like. We'll get back to this later and talk more in detail about it. But if I go to, this is what the Bitcoin miners did this week. I mean, BitDeer was up 38%. This is this week. So Bitcoin, like we talked about, had a phenomenal week, but it actually came in last place, which is a very good sign. This is what we want this chart to look like. So this is week over week. Bitcoin up 12%. Now, Marathon just barely beat it, up 13%. So that was the low performer of the week, but you're going to see year to date, Marathon's actually doing very well. So I think, you know, these things even out over time. So I think that's part of the reason it lagged a little bit. But then you jump up to, you know, Iron at 17%, and then you jump onto CleanSpark, Hive, and Hut and Riot, all up 20% this week. And Bitfarms 23, Core Scientific 25, TerraWolf 28, Cypher 30, and BitDeer 38%. And again, this is 1 week. So we talk about volatility all the time on this channel because people really, really need to understand at the deepest level, mentally and emotionally possible, that this is a volatile space. We have all too often seen weeks that were this red, right? So we have horribly discouraging weeks, and then all of a sudden we turn around and get, I mean, if any other industry had a week like this, it would be like the greatest week of all time. But this is actually what we expect. In fact, there are days in the past that have been better than this chart right here. So that's what these things can do. They move like crazy. So for me, I'm a buy and hold and dollar cost average in type of a person, and I'm still waiting. I'm still red. I went red, right? We had a huge, so let's take a quick look at the year to date, which is getting better, but still not good. So year to date, Bitcoin's now up 2% year to date. So we finally got back positive with Bitcoin, up 2%. CleanSpark is in first place, down 2% year to date. So CleanSpark's been, you know, relatively speaking, the strongest performer. Marathon is in a distant second, but you know, it's a distant third from there. Marathon's down 15%. Riot's down 24%. I would tell you it is no coincidence that these are the three biggest miners and they have the three biggest HODL stacks. So they have performed the best this year. We talked about that coming into the year. I think last year was the year of the AI-related Bitcoin mining stocks outperforming the HODL stocks. This year, I think, is going to be the opposite. And that doesn't mean I think that the AI-related stocks are going to do poorly. I just think the HODL stocks are going to outperform. I'm still expecting all of this to go green. We are now almost 1/3 of the way through this year, as hard as that is to believe, but it is true. And, this is red. This is not what I was expecting. And, back to Sour Melon Gaming's point that this isn't enough. Like, this phenomenal week still leaves us, if you're in BitDeer, you're down 51%. Now, interestingly, BitDeer was up, I think the exact same thing, 51% in the month of December 2024. So what it has done in the 4 months since then is give that back. So, all things being equal, if you've held. Now, a lot of people probably bought high and are getting burned right now. And either way, you do not want to see a 51% pullback in something that you hold. TerraWolf, 47%. Core Scientific, 41%. Hive, minus 37%. Hut, minus 35%. I mean, you can see, you'll go down the list. I won't name every one. They're on the screen. But this was a very, very tough year so far. And we're almost 1/3 of the way through this year. So the first third of this year, red. Now, we got a week left. Maybe some of these will turn green. Bitcoin did just finally turn green for the year. Cleanspark's on the verge of turning green. I thought it was going to do so today, but it didn't. And then I think there's a lot of room to run. And if we go from, no, that's not where I want to go. If we go from, I took the high for each Bitcoin miner, the 52-week high, and I will say one of these was a little more than 52 weeks. They peaked in this cycle. They peaked about 13 months ago. But basically, this is the peak of this cycle, 2024, 2025. This is where all these companies are down from their 12-month, a 52-week high. You're talking about down between 55 and 74%. And we just had that unbelievably green week to take us to this place. So to me, there's still a lot, for those of you who look at this chart and go, wow, I don't really want to buy anything after, everything was up 20 or 30%. Just remember, they're still all down between 55 and 74% from their 52-week highs. I think many of these companies will take out their 52-week highs in the year 2025. I'm not saying all of them. We've living more and more in a world of winners and losers. In fact, we've pared this list down quite a bit from the 19 stocks we used to follow, and some more are going to go away. I will tell you, BitDigital stock BTBT, they're down 63% from their high. The issue with them at this point is, and we'll look at their monthly numbers later, they've stopped reporting, first of all, but second of all, they're mining 20-something Bitcoin a month, 20 or 30 Bitcoin a month. They have rebranded themselves. They are now a high-performance computing AI business. They do have some contracts in that arena, so it still may be a good stock to own. None of this is financial advice. You guys have to decide that for yourselves. But I really feel like it's no longer a Bitcoin miner. So I do think I'm going to take BitDigital off the list. I wish them well and hopefully great success in what they have moved into, because there's a lot of money. Obviously, we know there's a lot of money that's going to be poured into these data centers, and that's essentially what they're going to be. And a lot of the Bitcoin miners have allocated anywhere from 25% of their business to 75% of their business for data centers, high performance computing, AI. So there's a lot of these companies that are taking a hybrid approach, and that may be a great approach. There's a few companies that are really still trying to just pretty much stick with Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. The purest play at this point is CleanSpark, which has no aspirations to enter the high performance computing or AI business. So, if you like that portion of the business, understand you're getting none of it with CleanSpark. But they have hodled a lot. They hodled all their Bitcoin for about an 18-month period. They're, I think, the third or fourth largest holder of Bitcoin of any publicly traded company, behind MicroStrategy, obviously has the most by far, and then Marathon, and then Riot, and then CleanSpark. And then right behind that, I'll just go to a quick article while we're talking about it. If I can find it. So Tesla just reported $951 million in crypto holdings, and I'm just going to scroll down. Tesla has 11,509 Bitcoin. So CleanSpark has now passed, with this last monthly operational update, they have now passed Tesla in the amount of Bitcoin that they hold. HUT is very close to passing them, so that may happen sooner than later as well. So obviously, you know, Tesla is one of the top 10 holders, publicly traded companies, holders of Bitcoin. Miner Deegan, thank you for the super chat, said, Tom, at what Bitcoin price will shorts cover? I think you're starting, are you saying cover the Bitcoin miners, I assume? Because I think you're starting to see the very beginning of that cracking. And we'll go, I'm just going to go here and just remind everybody. This is CleanSpark. So as of March 31st, CleanSpark had a 32.67% short of their float. For those of you who don't really follow that, you know, short percentage, that is massive. Like, that puts them among the leaders of most shorted stocks in the market. You know, there's a few that have outrageous numbers, but, you know, anywhere over 25% is a very shorted company. And CleanSpark is at 32%. Marathon and Riot are pushing 30%, and so is TeraWulf. So those four, more so than even the rest of the Bitcoin miners, are just being shorted massively. And I do think that we're looking at, I'll tell you this, I don't know what the exact day is, but by the time we retrace our steps and get back to 109,000, I think you're going to see, even between now and then, some very big moves in these companies, and a lot of that is these shorts getting out. Now, there is a high volume of trade on a lot of these companies, so it's not going to take forever for these shorts to unwind, and it's not going to cause the mother of all short squeezes, just because of, look, the average trading volume's 28 million shares. So there's currently, you know, 3 days worth of shorts, which is a lot. So, you know, it will cause a spark, and that feeds on itself. But, you know, don't expect a 200% move like you do in some of these tiny stocks. When they get a short squeeze, they can go ballistic. But I would say we very frequently in the past have had 20 or 30% moves, sometimes 40 or 50% moves in one day in some of these stocks. So, you know, the smaller the stock, the higher the likelihood those gigantic numbers happen. But I do think you'll see, even in Marathon, Riot, and CleanSpark, which are the three biggest by market cap, I think you're going to see 20% days, you know, 20% up days. I hope we don't see any more 20% down days, but we've seen them in the past. And 20 or 30 or 40 or 50% up weeks. And I still think most of these are going to 2x or 3x or 4x or more. All right, we're at 35 likes. If everybody could please do us a big favor, we're going for 100 likes. We've gotten there every single time. The last 2 weeks in a row, we have struggled and just got to 100 within the last 2 minutes of the stream. So help us out. It helps the channel out in real time. It helps the stream out in real time. And we really want to get people here talking about the Bitcoin miners, because I think there's a big opportunity. So I'm going to run that poll next. I really think the opportunity is ahead. And, you know, we just had a very good week, but that 1 week by no means makes up for the poor performance. Really, a lot of these stocks for the year 2024 performed very poorly. I'll point out Bitfarms in particular was down 50% in 2024, and it's down a bunch again in 2025. So, you know, it could quadruple and still not get back to its previous high. So there's a lot of room to the upside. We'll see which ones, which companies get there. Pogo saying, hey, Tom, Edmund suggested this MicroStrategy to 20K. MicroStrategy to 20K. Buy MicroStrategy and feature MicroStrategy on the channel. You will make money and help more people. It's a win-win for talking investing. I'm going to talk about, so you're going to be very disappointed with what I did this week. I'm going to talk about MicroStrategy, and I actually sold my MicroStrategy. So I built a position, I've held a position. It was way down, and this was the week. I've been talking about this for a while. I wanted to wait to get back to basically zero. So I finally got all the way up to basically break even on my MicroStrategy. And I just feel like, and I'll show you why. MicroStrategy ran so hard in 2024 that where it's at right now versus where the Bitcoin miners are at, I just think there's way more upside to the Bitcoin miners than there is at MicroStrategy. Now, on January 1st, 2024, obviously that wasn't true because MicroStrategy significantly outperformed every single Bitcoin miner in 2024. It was not close, but I don't think you're going to see that happen this year, and I just have a higher level of confidence in the Bitcoin miners that I have chosen, that have been beaten down. While MicroStrategy's up 500%, you've got Bitcoin miners that are down 70%. I just think the discrepancy between those two things, leaves a lot more room to the upside for the Bitcoin miners. Sour Melon Gaming saying 100% agree, Tom. Sorry, Edmund. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying MicroStrategy is a bad investment, or that it's going to do poorly in 2025. I think all things Bitcoin related, and MicroStrategy is one of them, are going to have a great 2025. I know a third of the way through the year, that's not true. So, the first third of the year was no good, but I do think we'll rally. I think the bull run is still on, and MicroStrategy will participate. There's just so much more room for the Bitcoin miners to participate. Now, if you've lost faith in the business model of the Bitcoin miners, then that would be a reason to not invest in them. I still think there's several of these that have very good business models, very strong balance sheets. And one of the things that happened is that these companies went to get through this halving. This halving was different for the Bitcoin mining industry than all the previous halvings, because this is the first time Bitcoin's been this mature. In the past, the network was a fraction, the overall network was a fraction of what it is right now. The profitability equation was easy money, and there was only a few publicly traded Bitcoin miners. All of the Bitcoin miners have had to shift in the last 4 or 5 years to become as close to fully vertically integrated as possible, meaning, getting right to the energy source versus, having to buy through middle people, having more people in the middle hosting. These companies aren't doing that anymore. They've got their own energy. They're hosting their own machines. Marathon has their own Bitcoin mining pool. I mean, these companies are getting highly vertically integrated. So not only did they grow, some of these grew. Marathon went from 1 to 50 plus exahash in the last 4.5 years. So, when you're 50xing the size of your company and going from an asset light strategy to a fully integrated strategy, that takes a lot of money. So a lot of these companies did a lot of stock dilution. And I can tell you, there is no question, it was the #1 comment by a mile. Too much stock dilution. These are just stock dilution machines. These companies are garbage. Well, you're going to notice in 2025, companies are getting away from diluting. There's a lot of companies that have done no stock dilution in 2025. And I'm going to get to a press release that came out this week. In fact, I'll just take a break and go to it. Here's Riot Platforms. Riot Platforms announces $100 million credit facility with Coinbase. Riot is pleased to announce that it has entered into a $100 million credit facility with Coinbase. a subsidiary of Coinbase Global. Under the terms of the credit facility, Coinbase will provide a multiple drawdown term loan facility in an aggregate principal amount of $100 million. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but essentially, so here's the quote from Riot. Riot has entered into its first Bitcoin-backed facility, which provides us with non-dilutive funding at an attractive cost of financing. This is the third or fourth different company that has come out with a press release like this. These companies are trying to make it clear, hey, all that dilution we did, yes, we may have tripled the amount of stock we have outstanding, but we 10x'd the amount of exahash that we have, or 20x'd the amount of exahash that we have. So that's the equation that I have tried to look at, and I've shown that in a lot of videos. Here, this company diluted 40% this year, but they quadrupled in size. Okay, to me, that's a bargain, but you can't do that forever. So now I think they're all very clearly sending the signal. It started with CleanSpark. CleanSpark basically said they closed their at-the-market offering. They didn't open a new one. They have borrowed money, and they've now adopted a hybrid approach, whereas for about a year and a half, CleanSpark saved, I won't say every single, somewhere between 95 and 100% of the Bitcoin that they mined each month, they added to their HODL position. For about 18 months, they have now switched gears to saying they're going to pay for operations with the Bitcoin they mine, and whatever they have left over, they're going to add to their HODL position, which should be a sizable amount. That should still leave Riot as adding, CleanSpark as adding maybe the third most Bitcoin to their HODL every month. They have the third largest HODL position, so it should allow them to stay in that spot. And we'll look at some of those exact numbers in a few minutes as well. But to me, this is look at the first quote they put. Riot has entered into its first Bitcoin-backed facility, which provides us with non-dilutive funding. So I think you're going to see more and more and more of that. This is the trend. 2025 is going to be the year of non-dilutive funding, whereas 2024, for a lot of people, they ran for the hills. They just felt like these companies were going to dilute themselves into non-existence. But I would say two things. Number one, most of these companies geared up to the point where, the halving occurred, so you got to double just to keep up with that. The difficulty level continues to increase, so you have to grow to keep up with that. But most of these companies did more than both of those things put together, plus vertically integrated a lot of what they did. So they spent a lot of money on infrastructure. Riot in particular has something like 1.7 or 2 gigawatts of their own infrastructure they built from the ground up in Texas that, they've been making 30, 40 or $1 million a year just selling energy back to the grid when the Texas grid is desperate for energy. So, that obviously Bitcoin miners are uniquely have the unique opportunity to just turn things off and sell their, it's a monetary equation. Are we going to get more money selling our energy or mining Bitcoin with it? Makes no difference as an investor. Whichever way they're going to get more money, that's what they should do. Welcome, George.
Hello.
Welcome to the stream.
I couldn't be more wrong. You couldn't be more wrong.
Tell me.
MicroStrategy's going to 20K. There's not going to be a multiplier at all. There's no multiplier.
There's no multiplier.
No, I heard that. And you think about it, earnings are multipliers, right? That's how they do it. And why can't we get that in our Bitcoin miners?
Right. And I think you're going to see that's a good point. I think you're going to see these companies have already gone, they've gone through a process where they've gone cash flow positive, then they got, EBITDA positive, and now a lot of them are getting gap positive. So they're starting to make money. And as Bitcoin runs, they're going to make money.
I'm just flabbergasted with the week. It was finally nice to see Bitcoin up there, huh?
This was just a good week. I mean, there's no other way to slice it. we're here for all the bad weeks, and we feel the pain. So, we might as well share a little bit of the good stuff together. And congratulations to those who either held through this very difficult period or added to your positions.
It's almost a 50-50 split. It's 30-70, 70 thinking we're going to 88. I think we're going there, by the way.
So do I. So my answer is I think that the bull run's back on and we're headed back to our new all-time high. There will be lines of support that we retest along the way, right? When Bitcoin never travels in a straight line, and this is the very definition of volatility, this space. But I think,
Tom,
yep.
I gotta say, before I forget to tell you, you did call the bottom. And I couldn't believe it when you called it. I was like, you're a nut. I can't believe you called this the bottom. And you're like, yep, guys, I'm telling you, this is the bottom. I think that was like 2 Fridays ago, was it?
And I almost never, I'm so hesitant to ever call a bottom because, it's most often a fool's game. But when so many things line up like this, in my mind, it got to the point where barring some, I hate to even use the used term, some black swan event, it would have taken to not everything was pointing to the fact that we were knee deep in the bottoming out process and we were about to turn around, and all the technicals were showing that. And I'm going to show a couple articles, and this is really what starts to clue you in my opinion. I'm just going to go through a bunch in a row. April 21st, chart of the week. Quote, dire picture for Bitcoin miners as revenue flatlines near record low. Every single day since this article was written, almost every single Bitcoin miner has been green. And in the aggregate, all of the Bitcoin miners are up drastically since the day this article was written and published. These are the types of articles you read when you're at the bottom. Dire picture. And let's go to another one. Wall Street keeps warning of a sell America trade. Again, April 22nd, every single day since this article was written, both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ have been up, and some of them have been massive up days. This was a giant up week for the market. So, was this ringing the bell at the bottom? Here's somebody calling for capitulation at 65,000, an area of support for Bitcoin at 50,000. Well, we're at 95,000 now. So, obviously, who knows what the future holds. But while this person was worried about 50,000, they missed their opportunity to dollar cost average in on the way back up to $95,000.
Hey, everybody.
So, and that's the three that I just grabbed to show you guys quickly. There was hundreds of, this was the narrative. And whenever everybody gets this, the fear and greed index, not the crypto fear and greed index, the overall market fear and greed index on a scale from 0 being complete fear to 100 being complete greed, it got down to 3, and it spent 4 days at 3 or 4. Those are 4 of the worst 5 days in the history of the fear and greed index. We're all within the last 2 weeks. So that tells me, was this some historic event that occurred? Is this really, were 4 of the last 5 days in the last 2 weeks the biggest panic days in the history of the stock market? No, people were wildly overreacting. There were 3 different days that the stock market crashed. 2 of them were back to back. So to me, all those things were making it clear. And the other thing, the reason I was comfortable with calling the bottom in Bitcoin was while all that was happening and the bottom was falling out, Bitcoin was holding its own. Bitcoin did very well through all of that. There was a lot of articles about how, Bitcoin was separating from the market and, that correlation was disappearing. So if ever there was a chance to drive Bitcoin down to these $65,000, $50,000 numbers that this person was talking about, that was the moment. And it didn't happen. So the Bears gave it everything they had. And again, that doesn't mean we're up in a straight line from here and every day is good forever. You guys know that's not how it works. But I think it was, there's very few times that it's this low risk to call a bottom. And there was one day, George, where you said, it was a Tuesday, and I had made, it was my big purchase day 2 Tuesdays ago, where you said, if you're not going to buy on this day, then you're never going to buy. Everything had plummeted in a way where it's like, if you're not buying this dip, that just means you're not buying. And that was the day I did my biggest dollar cost averaging in across the board. And it turns out that was the low.
For me, I didn't buy because I didn't have any money.
Well, obviously, unfortunately, because it's the 900th buying opportunity, there's a lot of people that were in that situation where they couldn't buy the dip. But what I hope is that they didn't sell the dip, because that's where I get worried. And I will show you, there was, let me see if I can find it. That's not it. There was a couple of articles. Okay, so Bitcoin whales return in force by the Bitcoin price rally, on-chain data shows. So the whales are buying. There's another article, if I can find it. I must have put it somewhere. I put it someplace thinking that would help me find it, and then, of course, it's the opposite. Well, I'll find that when I find it. But essentially what they basically said is, with the Bitcoin ETFs, the big buyers, the whales, have been buying into the ETFs big time. And the retail investors, they use the word fleeing. So it was the retail investors dumping the ETFs while the big money was buying. So, that is exactly what we said, 4 different times on here. I hope that people are not buying high and selling low. Because now they're either going to be on the sidelines forever or they're going to chase. Now, again, in my opinion, with the Bitcoin miners, we'll look at a couple things real quick. With the Bitcoin miners, it's not like you're too late. So this was this week. Yes, this was a phenomenally awesome green week. But if you go from the 52-week highs, all of these Bitcoin miners are still between 55 and 74% off of their 52-week high. So did you miss the buying opportunity? No. There's still a lot of room ahead to buy, whether you wait for a little dip or you dollar cost average. The true people that are winning are the people that dollar cost average. That's been the most tried and true method of investing. And, not financial advice. There's more than one way to do this. I know some people that have swing traded. George, you did swing trades with the same amount of money and ended up with like 1.5 extra Bitcoin for nothing.
Yeah.
So, that can be a great strategy if you play it well, too. There's all kinds of different ways to make money and lose money in the market. So you got to know what you're comfortable with.
What's your top on Bitfarms this cycle, Tom, you think?
So I'm going to stick with, I started about 1.5 years ago. I said that I think Bitcoin would get to 150,000 at the top of this cycle. And about 4 or 5 months ago now, I revised that to 175,000. So I think we're going to be somewhere between 150 and 175,000 at the top of this cycle. I'm still holding to that. We had a pullback. What do you say?
Would that change if Trump makes a strategic reserve in America?
If Trump gets a strategic reserve through, if they start purchasing Bitcoin, then I'm going to lean towards the higher end of that 150 to 175 range. And yeah, listen, I'm not going to be shocked if we hit 200. I know a lot of people are saying 200. A lot of people are saying 250. I have an article here somewhere of somebody that just this week called for Bitcoin 250,000 at the top of this cycle. So none of those things. I'm not going to sit here and fall out of my chair if Bitcoin's at $210,000. I think that's totally possible. And catalysts like that are what will do it. And my other, my mindset is there's more positive catalysts ahead than there are negative. And we went through this tariff thing. Everybody lost their mind. That's what caused the massive fear, and then we went through the tariff thing. And then Jerome Powell came out and said, hey, I'm super worried about stagflation, which is probably the worst word in the English language, if it's an actual word, that the Fed chairman could say to make the market become worried. So he came out and talked about that. So the market tanked. After the market tanked on U.S. upping the ante on tariffs, and then China responding and upping the ante on tariffs, and then Jerome Powell comes out and said, I'm worried about stagflation. Like we had an unreasonable knee-jerk, massive move to the downside, and we're making up for it this week, and I think that'll continue. And MicroStrategy to 20K is asking, is it better to have a lot of exahash or 5% of all the Bitcoin ever? MicroStrategy will have 5% within 2 years. So like I said, I'm not knocking MicroStrategy, and I don't know which one of those things is better. You think they're the same?
Who, me?
Yeah. No, I thought you said something. I couldn't hear.
No, but I want to know why that strategy is not working for Mara.
In other words, they're doing the same thing. Marathon, is closing in on 50,000. So, they started a lot later than MicroStrategy, but Marathon has the second most Bitcoin on their balance sheet of any publicly traded company in the world. And so they haven't gotten the run yet, but I do think if you look at year to date, you'll see, all the Bitcoin miners are in the green, but Marathon's in second place. CleanSpark, Marathon, and Riot are the three companies. There's four companies that have a big stack of Bitcoin, one of which is HUT. And until just about 2 weeks ago, HUT had basically abandoned their Bitcoin mining. They did a 180 on that. So although HUT has the fourth largest HODL stack, it's, within 5% of what it was 3 years ago. They haven't added virtually anything to their HODL stack in the last 3 years. Versus CleanSpark, which went from 500 a year and a half ago to 12,000 in their HODL stack today, and Marathon, which went to 47 or 48,000, and Riot's at 18,000. So these are huge stacks, and they're the top three performers in 2025. Granted, they're still all red, so it's not great news, but I think you're going to see this get exaggerated. I think these companies will do the best in 2025, and that doesn't mean that I think the other companies are going to fail. One doesn't have to fail for the other to succeed. I just think this is where the money's best. For me, these are my higher level conviction investments. But I do mix it up, and I will tell you, I went in, and so the stuff I've been talking about, I sold my MicroStrategy, and when I waited. I did not want to sell it at a giant loss, although, some of it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other if you're just going to reinvest it into the same space. But I sold my MicroStrategy, and with the proceeds, I bought I spent about 40% of it on Hive, about 40% of it on Iron, and about 20% of it on Riot. So I, increased my positions in all of those. So I kept the money in the space. I just think especially, let me go to a different. So from the 2022 lows, the bottom of the crypto winter, Bitcoin's up 517%. Hive, which just had a huge announcement we'll go through, Hive's up 32% from their all-time low at the bottom of the crypto winter in 2022. And by the way, this was at 5% last week. So, it ran up, or 1 or 2 weeks ago. Actually, it took out there was one day it actually took out the low from the bottom of the crypto winter. So to me, and then we'll go and just take a look at what Hive is doing. And before I do that, I'm going to ask one more time. We're at 66 likes. We're making progress. We're shooting for 100. if you can, if you're new here, if you just got here, or if you're willing to, if you could hit the like button, it does help the channel out a lot. It's much appreciated. So with Hive, so Bitcoin's up 517% in the same time that Hive's up 32%. And you can see that's disproportionate. There's no other Bitcoin miner acting like that. Some of them are acting poorly. Bitfarms, I just got through to explaining what a disaster Bitfarms has been, but it's up 173% versus Hive's 32%. So I just think if any of these has a 10x potential, it's the one that's still, for all intents and purposes, still at their low from the bottom of the crypto winter. Bitcoin was at $15,000 when Hive was at the same price, essentially, that it's at today. Now, if Hive is going to fail as a company, then that's not a good investment. But if they're going to succeed, and they came out with this. So this was on April 20th. Hive Digital Technologies announces 100% completion of the first 100 megawatts of infrastructure in Paraguay and strategic operational hire. So they hired a new member of the C-suite, but that's not what I'm really interested in. Hive has now completed construction and energization of the 100 megawatt phase 1 infrastructure. And this is all at their Paraguay site. There's another 100 megawatts coming up behind that. But here's the part. Here's what this does for them. The company expects to scale to 5 exahash in Paraguay and 11.5 exahash total hash rate across all operations by the end of Q2. So that is 1 month and 1 week away. So in the next month plus, they're basically going to double their exahash because they're at 6.5 exahash right now. They're going to get to 11.5 exahash in the next month and a half. And then, by the way, they're still aiming for 25 exahash. So they're looking to get from 6.5 exahash to 25 exahash in, call it, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, call it a 5-month window of time. And this is a stock that's trading at its lows from the bottom of the crypto winter. So no, nothing is a guarantee. And so, and by the way, they said that this first 5 exahash is all already paid for. Now, how they get from 11.5 to 25 remains to be seen. Let me get to Clive. Clive, who was a member, thank you very much. Then thank you for the super chat. Tom, are you aware that on April 24th, the Federal Reserve announced a significant policy change regarding cryptocurrency? So I do have something from the Federal Reserve that's kind of getting on board with the rest of these agencies. So thank you for pointing that out, Clive. Let me see if I can find that article. Just give me one moment. Come on now. Okay, the Fed joins the OCC and the FDIC in withdrawing crypto warnings for U.S. banks. So all of these things are significant. Remember Choke 2.0, Choke Point 2.0, and that was real. We showed many articles on that all of these barriers and fences they've been putting up between traditional financial institutions and banking and the cryptocurrency world, they are tearing these down. And I've got something else that the SEC is doing that's going to go more to this. So like the other U.S. bank agencies, the Fed has swept the decks of all previous directives to bankers that they get sign-offs from the regulator for crypto activity. So they were requiring sign-offs for crypto activity. The Federal Reserve has completed the trio of U.S. banking agencies that have now eliminated the previous crypto guidance they issued to bankers. The Fed said it made the move in part to support innovation. So everybody's getting on board. The Office of Comptroller, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corp, the FDIC, more commonly known as, and now the Federal Reserve are all telling the banks, you know, you don't have to jump through any special hoops. You're not going to get demerits or points against you for being affiliated with or having customers that are involved in cryptocurrency. I mean, it was a very anti-cryptocurrency stance, but we now have In better news, so thanks again, Clive. Crypto ally Paul Atkins sworn in to replace Gary Gensler atop the U.S. SEC. So we no longer have Gary Gensler to kick around. He's gone. He's out. We have Paul Atkins, who is a much more crypto-friendly individual. So as the new chairman, Atkins takes over a commissioner already working towards friendly digital asset policies and hosting crypto roundtables. But I'm going to go to another article that just came out on the same thing. And this came out today. New SEC Chief Atkins says the agency doesn't have to wait to impose crypto policies. In his first public appearance as SEC chairman, Paul Atkins opened the latest crypto roundtable in the agency's Washington headquarters. Paul Atkins made a crypto event. Atkins said the agency will be rethinking crypto special purpose broker dealers and custody policy, and he said the SEC can move forward with existing authorities while it awaits congressional action. So they don't need Congress to pass a bill. The SEC has a lot of discretion in making and enforcing their rules. The first thing that we've seen is they have now basically dropped every lawsuit, and they were the most lawsuit happy. It was a frenzy of lawsuits. If you were a crypto exchange or even, a blockchain, watch out, because the SEC was looking for you. And those are all gone now. And now the opposite's happening. They're saying you've got the SEC, you've got the FDIC, you've got the Federal Reserve, all saying this is okay. This is innovation. This is here to stay. So this is a part of the biggest reason I believe that the bull run will continue, and that although we will have bull and bear markets like everything else, I don't think we're going to have crypto winters. I don't think we're going to have 80% pullbacks in Bitcoin. I'm not going to speak to the altcoins. The altcoins are a different universe altogether. But the adoption of Bitcoin is real. Every bank is going to be in Bitcoin. BlackRock's already knee-deep in Bitcoin. And we see adoption, every single stream we give a new example of some important adoption for Bitcoin or some barrier being broken. For instance, here's two we just talked about right now: the Federal Reserve and the SEC moving in the right direction. And it's every week. And there's a lot left. With all of that said, the vast majority of gigantic trillion or multi-trillion dollar pools of money have yet to even dip their toe in the water. So there's so much more ahead than there is behind, in my opinion.
What a day, what a day. At least we're in the green again. That's nice to see again.
We're in the green. We had a good week. That's what I'm saying. Part of all this is to celebrate the good weeks, because we certainly lament the bad ones, and we've certainly had more than our fair share of bad weeks. I'm going to go back to another chart. If you look at 2024, half of these Bitcoin miners, while Bitcoin was up 122%, Cleanspark, Marathon, BitDigital, Riot, Hive, Bitfarms, all in the red on the year. By the way, Cypher up 12% versus, Bitcoin up 122%. There was only 3 Bitcoin miners that did okay at all. BitDeer up 120%, TerraWolf up 136%. This is from start to finish the year 2024. And Core Scientific up 153%. This is why I say if you go to MicroStrategy and I look at the last 1 year, well, now it's up 200% in the last 1 year. We're not going to really get, because it happened right before that. But if you look, this took the run from late 2023. This was a $30 stock, $31.42. It has 10x'd, more than 10x'd from 12x'd from October of 2023 until now. So this is why I say MicroStrategy has had a lot of its run. A lot of it, in my opinion, is built in. I think they're going to keep buying Bitcoin. I think that strategy has proven to be a positive strategy for them. And so I'm not saying it's a bad stock to own. You know, obviously you guys need to make your own purchase decisions, but I feel like, you know, this is a stock that's up from the lows of the crypto winter. This stock has 12x'd. From the lows of the crypto winter, Hive is up 37%. This is up 2,836% from its 5-year low. So this is what I'm talking about. One is not, you know, saying one's going to succeed does not equal me saying the other one's going to fail.
Tom, there's a question going on in the chat. You want to hear it?
Yes.
I don't know if this is correct or not, but I probably, as Gary said, Marathon all-in mining cost was 134,333 all-in costs, including stock-based compensation and miner depreciation. They are bleeding money and gaining a Bitcoin for 134,333.
So I don't know what that exact number is. I do have a spreadsheet. I don't have it up. I calculated the cash cost and total all-in cost for Bitcoin for all of these companies. And Marathon was one of the higher ones. Having said that, their cash cost is still less than the price of Bitcoin by far. So they're still cash flow positive. Now, yes, it's true. They have non-stock compensation. They have gigantic, right? They're at 54 exahash of infrastructure. They have some gigantic depreciation numbers. And one thing to understand about depreciation is there's what's called accelerated depreciation. So you get to depreciate a lot more of your assets up front, particularly in years 1 and 2. And they put very short lives. My guess is some of these companies have 2-year asset lives or 3-year asset lives on their Bitcoin miners. So they're writing these off as fast and as furiously as they possibly can. Not to make an excuse, there's no doubt. To Gary's point, Marathon has one of the higher costs. And if you go all in, they are not making money from GAAP, but they are making money EBITDA. And I think that's important. Right. And like I said, they're not going to, they built out 54 exahash of Bitcoin mining. They're not going to have to rebuild that infrastructure. The Bitcoin mining machines, the price of the machines themselves versus the energy infrastructure, the price of the machines keeps going down and down and down and down. Their companies are paying just a small fraction today of what they paid in the last bull market. Remember, in the last bull market, it was machines that was the bottleneck. The companies that made machines could sell them at whatever price they wanted and ask for 100% deposit, and you still might not get a delivery for 6 months or a year. Well, we're in the flip side of that equation now. Those machines have turned pretty much into a commodity. They're pennies on the dollar for what they were 4 years ago. So I just feel like a lot of this is going to flush its way through the system, and the next time around, you're not going to see the same equation. But that being said, yes, not all Bitcoin miners are created equal as far as their cost per Bitcoin, their cash cost per Bitcoin, and their all-in cost per Bitcoin. And be careful about some of these temporary costs, that get counted in operations. Like this time you're going to get write-downs because Bitcoin finished lower at the end of this quarter than it did at the end of last quarter. And that's going to go against operating income now. So you got to dig into the financials. But yes, some are better than others. But I believe all of the Bitcoin, I know all the Bitcoin miners that I hold are cash flow positive, and most of them are EBITDA positive, and a couple of them were actually GAAP positive, somewhere near break even or positive. So, and that's an environment where, we just had a 30% pullback in Bitcoin. So I do think you're going to see, there's a big difference between at 84,000 versus if Bitcoin does get to 150 or 175 or 200,000, like the peak of the last bull market, I think you're going to see these companies be very profitable and very much more mature companies with valuable assets. These energy assets, long-term energy assets, are something that none of these companies had in the bull cycle 4 years ago.
The poll's looking interesting.
So let's get a new poll up. What we got over 100 votes in this poll. Thanks everybody for voting. What do you think about the current Bitcoin price action? Temporary bounce and retest the lows. 30% think that. The bull run is on, a new all-time high. 70% say we're going to a new all-time high. So a more bullish than bearish crowd. So let's just do a quick, we'll ask the next obvious question. And this is one we try to do in every
Who owns Bitcoin?
I'm going, what's the high going to be for this cycle?
So I was driving my $3,000 convertible a week ago, and I was looking at all these people with these really fancy cars. And I said, I bet you don't own a Bitcoin.
I'm going to do a little bit. I'm going to go back to our old numbers.
Uh-oh.
Well, people were getting so bearish, I lowered some of these numbers. Let's see what people are thinking right now. Okay, so what do you think the Bitcoin high will be for this bull cycle? So to me, that's somewhere in 2025, late 2025, potentially in 2026, whenever you think the peak is. 110,000, meaning essentially all we're going to do is retest the highs we already hit and the bull market's over. 150,000, 200,000, or 250,000. And if you think it's going to be higher than 250,000, then obviously pick 250,000.
So
I was
always going to be higher than 150. I picked 150 because I think it's going to peter out between 150 and 200.
You think it's going to finish somewhere above 150, but it won't get to 200.
I don't.
So that's what I think. I'm in the 175 area, and I was putting 175 in and leaving 250,000 out, and 175 was getting very little votes. So now I'm giving the opportunity for the ultra bulls to share their voice that think Bitcoin's going to 250 or maybe more than 250.
125. Well, I'll take it. My problem is I have a theory, and I guess I'll share it. You guys, it's just a theory, like toilet paper. You only write, right? You only do it once in a while, I guess. Is we're gonna hit a new all-time high, and then I think the bottom's gonna fall off.
So you think we got one more dip?
Yeah, I think we got a dip.
Well, let me bring up a chart because George brings up a very good point.
Oh, does the chart say there could be a dip?
Well,
you know how you showed me some type of graph one time, and you had the number of times it retraced, boom, boom, boom. You know,
and that's literally what I'm looking at right now. If you go back in time, even this thing, which doesn't look well, that one's only at 10%. That's only at 10%. So where's the dips? We had in 2024, we had 5 20% or more dips. So let's see. This is clearly one of them. And this was the big one. So we had a 30% dip. That was the biggest dip of 2024. We had 5 that were over 20, 1 that reached 30. So this was in August. But that's a dip. You know, before that, here's a 25% dip. Before that, 23% dip. Let's see if this was, because you know sometimes these start to not look like it, but they're actually this was a 21% dip back in January of 2024. So these happen. So to think that, well, it's just gonna, you know, we're gonna get a new all-time high and then it's just gonna go straight up forever. Bitcoin's never done that. In the last bull market, we had just as many, if not more, 20% pullbacks and a 30% pullback. And oh, by the way, a 55% pullback right in the middle. In March of 2021, we hit 65,000. We pulled back 55%, only to turn around and get a new all-time high at 69,000 in early November. So the volatility is real. So to, you know, what George is talking about, you know, that there's more volatility ahead is probably likely.
Tom, did we get a 30% pullback already?
We did. We got more than that. We got, I'll show you. This is our biggest pullback in since the crypto winter. This was almost 32%. So that beat we had one in 2024 that was 30%. This was 32%. But conversely, very quietly, while people, you know, only just a few days ago, we're talking about Bitcoin 50,000.
What is the worst a Bitcoin has gone down in a cycle?
We're up 28.5 from today's high was up 28.5% from the low of 3 weeks ago. So, you know, Bitcoin, while everyone was, I just showed you all those articles of the sky is falling. That was the beginning of the turnaround. Bitcoin traditionally in a crypto winter falls 80%. It's done even worse than that in the past. So a crypto winter is, you know, 80 to 85%. And that's where I'm saying, I don't think Bitcoin's got any more crypto winners. That doesn't mean they don't have bear markets ahead. We just played out a 3-month bearish pattern here. This was brutal. Right? This was 3 full months and we were down 30%. That's, you know, if the equity markets did that, they'd call it a crash.
I call it a crash. 90%. Wow. Can you imagine staying with it? Those are the real OGs. You know that?
Well, the Bitcoin miners in this last crypto winter, the best performing Bitcoin miner, the best one, and this is when we were tracking 19 Bitcoin miners. The best performing Bitcoin miner was down 91%. The worst one was down 99%. And I think there were 3 or 4 down 98 or 99% in the crypto winter. But even the best one, they were all down more than 90%. So take your blue chip Bitcoin miner and it was down. Pick a Bitcoin miner, any Bitcoin miner. Right? The biggest one of all is Marathon. So if I look at Marathon on a 1 week, like it's off the charts. So Marathon peaked November 8th. That was the day, plus or minus this day. That's the day Bitcoin peaked. That's the day Marathon peaked. So if we go from here to the bottom of the crypto winter, which was in December of 22, Marathon was down 96%. 96%. So, you know, if you dollar cost averaged in along the way, and it was down for a long time. I mean, from June of 2022 until October of 2023, you know, it wasn't too far off of those numbers. So it was down between 80 and 96% for over a year. If you were buying in this period, you were getting that dollar cost average down. Now, if you were, look at these giant green weeks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 giant green weeks in a row, if that's when you built your position in Marathon, then you're in sad, sorry shape by now, and you've probably long since taken your loss and moved on from this. But from the bottom of the crypto winter until now, Marathon's up 377%, and at its peak in November, it was up almost 900%. So this is what I'm saying. We talk about, oh, these won't get 9Xs or 10Xs or 15Xs. Well, Marathon already got a 9X. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to 9X from here, because we're still almost 400% from the bottom. So, but I do think there's multiples left, right? We were at $30. Marathon just had a big, nice run here these last 3 days to get from around $10 to over $14. But this was a $30 stock in November, and a $34 stock, last February. So I think there's a lot, and all of the charts look like this. Everything Cleanspark. I mean, I'm not even going back to, so to be fair, Cleanspark's actual high was in January of 2021, but this was not the Bitcoin high. This was when they were a low to almost no revenue company. They just started mining Bitcoin 1 month before this. This was off of the bubble of small cap stocks that had no revenue and were 100% speculation, and they went through the roof. So, from that high to the low, Cleanspark was down 96%. But even if you go from what I consider their high, November 1st, so once again back in that time frame, to the bottom, that's 92%. 92, 93% dip. It was every single one of them. And you can see I didn't even cherry pick. I could have gone from this number, but I didn't. I went from here, from these November highs, down over 90%. Every single one of them. So, the question is are these going to have a big run up and then pull back 90% again? And whereas I think that Bitcoin will not do that, I'm less confident in the Bitcoin miners on the other side of the end of this bull market. So I think I'll do some profit taking has been my plan, and to continue to consolidate to the ones that I have the absolute highest level of conviction in. And that could change over time. It has. There was a while where Bitfarms was my #1 conviction stock, and it's not anymore. But I haven't sold any, and I've added a bunch to my position. And by the way, Bitfarms is at $1.03. It was only 2 weeks ago people were saying it's never going to get back to $1 again. It's going to have to do a reverse stock split. It's less than 2 weeks later, and we're over $1. So to take Bitfarms, for example, go back to the 1 day. From April 8th to now, Bitfarms is up 50%. That's a 50% run up in a few weeks. Right? That's 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Up 50%.
It's amazing to watch this game.
So these are the moves that you can get. But this is why, either if you're super ultra locked in and you're swing trading and making money, that's one way to go about this. Otherwise, if you're dollar cost averaging in methodically, to me, this is it just got back over this line of support at $1. So, I think it's going to hang out here, and I feel like the next move is up. A $1.50, that's another 50% move up, and that's from here to here, that's 118, that's 120%. So I think, in a 2 or 3 month window, Bitfarms could pull 120% move to the upside. We'll see what happens. And it's not the only one. You can see, I mean, just this week, if we go back to this chart, just this week, BitDeer was up 38% this week. Cypher, 30% this week. So, you know, this was a really good week. We're at 87 likes. Help us out.
I would think this would be a really good show because Bitcoin had such a good week.
Yeah, we had a good week we had a phenomenal Bitcoin up 12%. That's one of the great weeks for Bitcoin of all time. And all the Bitcoin miners up even more than that. But the thing is, a lot of people lost faith and left. The Bitcoin miners, you know, we heard for a year, this is dead money. This is dead money. These are all going to zero. This is, and trust me, I'm not celebrating early here. We've had one green week. We're still down on the year across the board. So we have a lot of work left to do. But to me, that's opportunity, right? If we go to year to date, we're still in the red across the board.
How about this one? So at one point in time, my XRP holding was 2x my Bitcoin holding, and it's almost neck and neck now.
So, yeah, one pulled back a little, and Bitcoin had a nice run up. So that's the volatility. But both of those, so I got some more. I'll tell you the other thing we have news on every single week, which I think separates it from the rest of the altcoins. And that is, let me find it.
Yeah, the White Rabbit said BlackRock doesn't own enough yet. They would bring the price back down.
CME to roll out XRP futures as interest and adoption in XRP grows. So now we're going to have on the CME a futures market. We've got already a 2x leveraged futures ETF. We're about to get a spot XRP ETF. Now we're getting futures on the CME. I mean, this is adoption. And I'll remind everybody, while this is still speculation and rumor, I'm going to call somebody out by name, and I will tell you I didn't watch the video, but I still see his thumbnails. Stockmo just had a thumbnail, something around XRP to $32 or $50. Someone can double check that on me.
Does anything to get clicks, doesn't he?
I mean, XRP is at $2. $32 is a 16x. So I'm not counting on that, but I will tell you, I'll revisit. This came out. XRP and Swift is the payment revolution here. So this was back on March 23rd. This is a while back now, but still, 1 month ago. Breaking news for XRP. The rumors are becoming increasingly persistent. Swift, the giant of international payments, could be on the verge of embracing Ripple and its native cryptocurrency XRP. Yes, you read that right. The system that moves trillions of dollars a day. Trillions of dollars a day is looking at XRP as the key to the future of cross-border transfers. So is this really going to happen? We don't know. This is rumor, but the rumor voices are getting louder and louder, and this obviously would be the mother of all game changes.
Wouldn't you call that a conspiracy theory?
This is on Binance. It's out of conspiracy theory into speculation. Right? It's not a confirmed fact. It hasn't happened, but this is some using their word, persistent speculation here happening that this is going to be something that happens. And there's XRP has news come out on a regular basis on adoption, and it's good news. And on the flip side of the coin, here, this is the news. This was a few days ago. Is Ethereum still special? So whereas XRP is running and
it's special, all right.
Is Ethereum still special? And let me find the other thing that to me is deeply concerning. For those of you who have been here a while, you know that I'm very skeptical of Ethereum. I thought the move from proof of work to proof of stake was a fatal blow for them. especially since they already announced at that time they have 4 more massive fundamental changes that they were going to make to the programming of Ethereum. Now, outside of those, we had this article. Vitalik Buterin, so he is Ethereum. That's another difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin. Nobody is Bitcoin.
Ooh.
Right? Or everybody is Bitcoin, however you want to look at it. This individual has an outsized sway on what happens in the Ethereum world. So Buterin argues, proposes replacing Ethereum's EVM with the RSIC-V architecture. So, and he says it will greatly improve the efficiency of the Ethereum execution layer. But the thing is, here's a bullet point. The EVM is a key piece of Ethereum's underlying design and has been seen as one of the main elements that helped the network succeed in a crowded field of other blockchains. So this is, yet another thing that was unique. Being proof of work was unique, right? Bitcoin's proof of work. There's only a very tiny handful of proof of work projects left. And you've got, I think, Ethereum Classic. You've got Caspa. You've got there's a couple of. Do they still mine Doge? There's, most of the other ones are tiny. So that was a massive shift, and now you're talking about switching platforms. And again, I'm by no means the expert on all of this, but go ahead, George.
No, you must be hearing when I play a video because I'm working on programming.
Oh,
hearing that, and that's what. But anyways, I got a real quick story because how we like to do them. Somebody said something about my conspiracy theory. Go research about ETH and go research what he was doing in the beginning of ETH. They just found how he scammed, I'll say, millions of dollars off of people, and no one knew it. Somebody actually took the time to, match the wallets up and then kept track of everything. It's a real interesting story. Someone talking about Caspa.
Yeah, I mean, that is on my altcoin watch list, and I am so afraid of altcoins. Everybody was so wrong about altcoin season that I'm terrified that altcoins aren't going to get the run up, that my money is better spent in Bitcoin miners. Now, I could be dead wrong, right? That's just the kind of thought process they want me in for them to have altcoin season. So, maybe this is just business as usual, but Caspa, I was panicking when Caspa was at 15 cents thinking I got to get in. And from there, it went down to like 5 cents. So we're very close. We're working our way out of. We actually, from January through March, we kind of had a altcoin crypto winter. These coins were down 60, 70, 80%. And I'm going to go to another thing that just happened that makes me very concerned. One of the top 25 coins, one of the biggest coins, did this last week. Look at this chart. That's called the edge of a cliff, down 90%.
Who is it? What coin was it?
That's Mantra, ticker OM. This is now the number 152 coin. This was very close. I think it was just outside of a top 20 coin. This was worth like $6 or $7 billion. Now it's worth $488 million. I mean, if you were in this coin, and by the way, it's not like they didn't try and solve this. Mantra to burn $160 million worth of tokens. So that didn't help. They're still down 90%.
Did you ever figure out why?
Well, they put out their theory as to why, and they said it was manipulation. But I mean, the fact that it has stayed down the 90%, they went and burned $160 million of these coins, and that did nothing, right? Is this now flatline? Would people that were in a top 20 or top 25 coin, did they lose all their money or 90% of their money and it's not coming back? I don't know.
That's a rug pull.
Right.
That's a freaking rug pull and a half.
So these are the charts that terrify you. You're not going to see a Bitcoin chart that looks like this. But we see a mantra chart that looks like this. So if you go look at if I go down the list, here's your $6 or $7 billion coins. You're talking about number 21 to number 26. So mantra was somewhere here with Bitcoin Cash. It was somewhere here with Litecoin, approximately the same market cap as Litecoin, Polkadot, right? These are all names we know. And that's where it was 10 days ago, and now it's gone. That's scary. So where's your money safe over here? And a part of it is I'm not highly educated on altcoins. So, that I have done some amount of due diligence, but 1/1000th the amount that I've done in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. And, my investment theory for the altcoins was, hey, it'll be altcoin season pretty soon. And I just don't think that's a really good investment theory. And I don't think I'm going to have a very high level of conviction. That leads itself to buying high and selling low, which I would have probably done with Kaspa if I can even find it on here anymore. So Kaspa is now number 47. It's at 10 cents.
So Tom, that makes you an expert on altcoins, by the way.
Having done a little bit of research.
You got it. Most of these are just pump and dumps. Anything probably go. I mean, they're make it. Trust me, a lot of them will. I won't say a lot. What's a lot? When you got 100,000 coins, 100 of them make it. That's a lot. No, it's not a lot. It's a small percentage.
Right,
So,
and it's
a lot of the projects are going to fail.
That's exactly right. The question is, will you catch a big pump in the middle before they fail and get in and out and make money in altcoin season? Kaspa got down here on April 7th. Kaspa got down to 5.3 cents. And if I do, a 1 year, this was at 20 cents. So it took the 20 cent to 5 cent run. This is why I'm saying these coins went into very quickly, and if you want more recently, it was at 19 cents to 5 cents. I mean, I don't know if I would have dollar cost averaged in down from there or just gotten out and called it a day. And Kaspa is one, like somebody mentioned in the comments. Let's see, Seeker said Marathon mines Kaspa. They actually put out a press release a year and a half ago calling out Kaspa. They're a massive part of the Kaspa network, and they said they were going to double the amount of dedicated machines to Kaspa, which is obviously still a tiny percent of what Marathon does. But yes, they are. It's a proof of work. Marathon is mining it. These are some of the reasons I thought it had a good chance of taking hold. And I still think it could be one of the ones that if there is an altcoin season, this could go from 10 cents to $1. I watched several videos on this of people, quote unquote, experts that, did their due diligence that talked about $2, $3, $4, $5 for Kaspa. But right now it's 10 cents. So, my confidence is not high. Let's see where this.
I can tell you what, I think there will be an alt season. I just don't think it's going to be as long.
Do you think it'll be as strong? It won't be as long. Will it be as strong?
Oh, yeah. I think you'll see a rotation into different coins because that's how the whales make their money, Tom. So there's definitely going to be an alt season. I mean, so, and I told you how it works, right? So all of a sudden, we'll hit a new all-time high with Bitcoin. After that happens, that usually, whenever, that usually kicks off the alt season. And then they'll go and let's just say Solana. They'll go pump Solana maybe like 35%, right? Or 50, 60, 70, 100. Let's just say 100%. And then they'll get out of Solana and then they'll go to Cardano, or they'll go to Tron, or they'll go to Dogecoin. And then they all just rotate out and rotate in and rotate out. And when you have that type of influx, hundreds of millions of dollars,
especially into some of the, we were looking at the top 25. If you go down to the top 100, some of those are very easy to influence.
And then here's the other thing. It's so sad to say this next statement, but do you realize that the rich have stolen more money from us commoners since 2020 than ever before? We have more debt. We have more defaults and mortgages. We have more, credit card debt, right? I think it's pushing 1.6 trillion.
Well, the trend continues. The rich get richer.
2020 will be known as the biggest money grab ever. From the have-nots to the have, which is crazy.
So here, to your point, here's that article I was talking about earlier. Bitcoin's April rally was driven by institutions while retail flees the ETFs, says a Coinbase executive. So, and we pounded the table in February, March, April. Don't buy high and sell low. But invariably, this is what happens, and the institutions do the opposite. We just looked at an article earlier, the whales are buying. Well, here's the retail was selling at the lows. Now, are they going to try and get back in at Bitcoin 95,000?
Yeah. Well, it's, it's like this. I mean, your emotions are tied to your money. When you see, for me in the miners, after I stopped day trading, I was in a great spot, but I thought we were at the beginning of something amazing in, Bitcoin. And I was wrong. And now I'm down, what, 80 some percent, 78%, I think.
Yeah, it's brutal.
It's emotional. But
So,
now I've kissed it goodbye, so now I can just go to freaking zero.
With Bitcoin, this is one of the charts we've been looking at. This goes back to January 24th. There was a very strong descending line of resistance. You can see all the different touch points here, all these days in a row here, candle wicking above, but never closing above. So finally, on April 11th, we closed above. We consolidated for a couple of weeks, all way above this line, and then we ran. So this is a textbook breakout. So once we did this and then confirmed this, that's the time. And this is the day right here. This red day right here is when I did my major purchases, relatively speaking. So I feel like in that regard, there was still room some time in the next day, and there's still room right now. I may buy more Hive. And I'll tell you, I was looking at HUT. I was looking at BitDeer. They ran so much, I didn't quite catch them. I can't get everything. But, I still think, with all this said, first I'm going to say we're at 93 and we're almost done. So if anybody can help get us to 100 likes, we would appreciate it. And then we'll go through the poll. I mean, if there's one chart that I would emphasize, it would be several charts, one of which is this. We see a breakout happening here, and I don't think that this momentum is done. But I want to go back to 2025 year to date. So if you think you've missed your opportunity in BitDeer, it's still down 51% this year. If you think you missed your opportunity in Iron, it's down 33%. HUT's down 35%. This while Bitcoin's up 2%. So yes, we had a great week, but that doesn't mean like the buying opportunities are gone forever. There's still a lot of room to run if there's a company you believe in the fundamentals of.
Tom, I have to start writing stuff down. I forget. I'm getting old, Tom. That's not good.
Got to make your notes. If I don't make my notes, I forget. Let me check my notes. See if I missed anything.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. When will people start talking about, instead of BTC, Satoshi. And I think that's the most interesting conversation that needs to be had. And who's building out on the network right now of, BTC? See, that's the stuff, because we don't know who made it or who, invented it. There's no like leader of the Bitcoin world, so to speak. Michael Saylor just talked about adoption. He doesn't
Yeah,
talk,
yeah, he's a strong voice, but he's not. There's no one in control of the network.
right. He doesn't talk about how Satoshi is designed to be used.
And
Satoshi,
Satoshi being the smallest denomination you can trade of a Bitcoin.
right. And that's the key to Bitcoin. And that is why I like Bitcoin, by the way, is because of the Satoshi. It's basically, once you have your own Bitcoin, you have like a little micro economy, is how I look at it, right? Where I have 100 million Satoshi.
Right. And
And
Pogo's answering your question at $1 million.
$1
People
million.
will start talking about.
But we don't talk about it. We trade it that way right now, not even thinking about it.
Right. Most 99.9% of buys and sells are in Satoshis, not in full Bitcoins.
So I think that that's, the factor of it that we don't think about with, BTC.
Let's look at the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It takes over the dollar at some point in time. You say, hey, how much you want for that? They're like, oh, that's, 5 Satoshis, 10 Satoshis. You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of people think that's where all of this ends. I think if it ends there, it's going to take an awfully long time to get there, but it could be a fun journey the whole way. Our poll, our final numbers on our poll here is, what do you think Bitcoin's high for this cycle is going to be? So 20% think the bull cycle is over 110,000. We hit almost 109. So essentially they feel like we may retest our high, but get no further. That's 1 in 5. 150,000 was 49%. That was the winner. 200,000 was 22%. And then there was 9% of the people, and we got, that just clicked up to 10%. Oh, it's bouncing back and forth. 10% of the people think we're going to get to 250,000 or more. So I think as a group, 80% still think we're going to get somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000. That's still very bullish sentiment that's out there, despite all of the sky is falling talk and chatter. Hey, we just hit 100 likes. Thank you. Once with 2 minutes left again. So this is like a new trend, George.
I know. I just saw that.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
so let's get to the question. You got any parting thoughts? Words of wisdom?
No, do you think, here's the next question. When do you think the God candle will happen, this cycle or next cycle? I think it will happen next cycle.
You're moving that all the way off to next cycle.
God candle. Yes.
And it depends exactly how you define that, but I think we're going to get some big moves. This Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, when it moves, it moves. So it may not be a day, but I think we're going to get some weekly candles that are staggering. This was a phenomenal. We were up 12% this week. So this was a really nice weekly candle. And I think also it was a breakout from a 3-month plus bearish trend. So let's just look at that. Not that. So this is on the 1 week.
Be nice. I'm finding it.
So you can see we've looked at this, and then this will be the last chart we look at. We had a bearish crossover back in February. We've been playing out this bearish divergence on the 1 week RSI, but this played out over a significant period of time, and I think this was the bottom. So, right, we went down 30% from the top. We're up 27% from the bottom. Obviously, that doesn't get you back to the same place. but I think we've turned the corner. You can see the bearish momentum continues to weaken and weaken and weaken. This is the 4th week in a row we have a smaller bearish candle, and we're moving towards a bullish crossover. And we've already started to have, and we talked about this back here, the bullish price action on Bitcoin doesn't start the day the bullish crossover does. It starts before. So I think that's what we're seeing right now. And I think we're going to segue right into, 2-3 weeks from now, a bullish crossover, and we've got a nice run ahead of us. Again, we could have pullbacks in the middle, but that's my feeling for the next 2 or 3 months.
Good talking to you, Tom. Nice seeing everybody.
Thank you, George. Thank you, everybody. Special thanks to all the members. Thanks to all the subscribers. If you haven't, you can smash the like button. You can subscribe to the channel. And everybody have a great weekend. Go Bitcoin.